And I had a nurse nurses at Walter Reed Hospital who would actually breathe in my nostrils to make me move, to get me moving.
Yes, the nurses at Walter Reed would breathe in his nostrils to make him move, to get him moving, because they thought maybe he was a kitten suffering from some kind of health emergency. They knew there was something terribly wrong with him. Blowing in his nostrils. It's not normal behavior for nurses or other medical professionals to blow in Joe Biden's nose or anybody else's. And it's a little bit ironic, though, since he spent so much time sniffing women and then the women come in and blow into his nose. That's turnabout is fair play, perhaps. A little bit weird. Irony, once again. Women blowing in your nose? You're usually sniffing women, you weirdo. And then he's got this weird story. It's probably just another fake story. He makes up so many stories. Well. Yes, indeed. Happy Wednesday and welcome back. Once again, we remain at 888-630-9625. On the telephones today is Jane, and Jane has a fun thought today. You know, with hipsters, the Democrats, they're going around wearing these Palestinian, the black and white and black keffiyehs, the Arab headdress, the Palestinian headdress, the Hamas genocide headdress, and it's kind of the hipster swastika of today. That's what Jane says. So it's kind of, the hipsters, they're turning the keffiyeh, the Palestinian headdress, into the 21st century swastika armband. And they've made it hip, just as I think the Socialist Workers' Party did in the 1930s in Deutschland, über alles. You know how it is. History is a funny thing, and if you don't know it, well, let's say. Now, there's so many crazy stories, and Joe Biden talking about nurses blowing into his nose to see if he's still alive. That is sort of a weird thing, no doubt about it. That's an old soundbite, but we like it because when somebody tells you who they are, believe them the first time. And this guy's been a freak show forever. Just ask Tara Reid, who he sexually assaulted when she was a Senate staffer in Joe Biden's Senate office. She actually worked for him. There's an actual provable relationship there, unlike, for example, Brett Kavanaugh and that crazy woman with the scratched up glasses who has 2 front doors and is out of her mind. But never mind that. So Joe Biden with all that crazy stuff and the blowing in my nose. Now, Joe Biden has all kinds of weird things, and his history is very checkered, his past and his present. And his future, no doubt, as well. It can only get weirder from here. But I do like the idea, Jane, that the hipster swastika is the Palestinian keffiyeh. Yeah, find an American name for that. But there's another story that popped today because the Democrats and the media, they must destroy Robert F. Kennedy Jr. They have to wreck Robert F. Kennedy Jr. because he's getting a portion of the vote. And if it's 2% of the vote, then that's too much as far as the Democrats are concerned. And they have to destroy him. The ABC News vote shows Donald Trump with their poll shows Donald Trump with 42% of the vote, Joe Biden with 40% of the vote, so a 2-point margin going to President Trump. That's not very good. That's margin of error, but it's not entirely bad. And then Robert F. Kennedy Jr. with 12% of the vote, 12% of the vote. And that means Robert F. Kennedy must be destroyed. He must be politically assassinated. We're still waiting since the Democrats in California granted Sirhan parole, and they have granted, the parole board granted Sirhan parole, who, of course, for Democrats listening along, murdered Bobby Kennedy, the father of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., when he was running for president in 1968. But pay no attention to that. And Gavin Newsom just has to sign the paper to let Sirhan walk out of prison a free man, because the parole board has already cleared that. And he hasn't signed it yet, even though the parole board paroled Sirhan. But now it's time for the Democrat Party to destroy Robert F. Kennedy Jr. because he is a threat to the party. Now, he is a member of the Kennedy family, the Democrat Kennedy family. He's not just a Kennedy Democrat. He's actually a Democrat Kennedy. He is, a lot of Americans would say, oh, I'm a John F. Kennedy Democrat, or people used to say that anyway. I'm a Kennedy Democrat. This guy's actually a Kennedy. He's not just a Kennedy Democrat. He's an actual Kennedy, and they don't care. They need to take him out. He must be taken out. And a new story popped today. And I want to share this with you because the Democrat Party's putting this out. Left-wing radical hate cult at Mediaite put it out. RFK Jr. claims a worm ate part of his brain and then died. This is, let me share the story with you, but this is the Democrat Party trying to drive a stake through the heart of the man with 12% of the vote because that's too much. They can't grant him that. And the story at the left-wing media, independent presidential candidate, lifelong Democrat, Kennedy Democrat, actual Kennedy. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. claimed in a, listen now, 2012 deposition, this is them doing opposition research and digging into everything he's ever said, they found a deposition that he was subjected to in 2012. That's 12 years ago now. That medical scans revealed a, quote, dead parasite, end quote, in his brain. The New York Times' Susan Craig reported on Wednesday, that's today, because the New York Times is in bed and having sex with the Democrat Party. The New York Times' Suzanne Craig reported on Wednesday that Kennedy started experiencing memory loss and mental fogginess in 2010, and that friends became concerned, and rightly so, since Kennedy's uncle, the late Senator Ted Kennedy, had died of brain cancer in 2009. Brain scans revealed a dark spot. A dark spot. It's like Joe versus the volcano. It's a brain cloud. A dark spot that was first thought to be a tumor, but a second opinion yielded a far weirder possibility. A dead parasite, Craig wrote. This is the New York Times reporter today, because the New York Times is a front group for the Democrat Party, and they do whatever the party wants. And Suzanne Craig of the New York Times, she wrote, the doctor believed that the abnormalities seen on his scans, quote, was caused by a worm that got into my brain and ate a portion of it and then died. Mr. Kennedy said in the deposition that was the New York Times got because the Democratic Party's opposition researchers dug into everything in RFK Jr.'s background. They found a deposition. They found this line. They fed it to the New York Times and to Suzanne Craig so they could take away the people that are interested in voting for RFK Jr. and win the election and seize power and destroy America. So the deposition was related to his divorce from his second wife, Mary Richardson Kennedy, who died by suicide in 2012 before their divorce was finalized. At the time, the Kennedy family thought that was very considerate of her, very thoughtful. The subject of the worms came up over in the question of money. At the time, Mr. Kennedy was arguing that his earning power had been diminished by his cognitive struggles. See, he's trying to say he shouldn't have to pay as much to his wife, who then committed suicide, and on and on that goes. So in the same deposition, Kennedy, who stated that other health conditions made him feel as if, quote, there's a bag of worms in my chest. I can feel immediately when it goes out. He said that is pretty crazy. And on Morning Joke on MSDNC this morning, they were fed the attack talking points by the DNC and the New York Times today as well. And so Morning Joke and the New York Times are ganging up on Democrat, lifelong Democrat. He's a member of the Kennedy family, for the love of Mike, and he's running now as an independent. He was running as a Democrat, but the Democrat Party forced him out, so he declared he's running as an independent. According to the ABC News poll just the other day, he's getting 12% of the vote. That's way too much. So he must be taken out. The political assassination of RFK Jr. is underway by the Democrat Party and their allies at the New York Times, like Suzanne Craig, and by the clowns at Morning Joke.
I think I just got, yes, I did. We just got some breaking news from the dead worm in the brain desk. Let's go to John in the head desk. Let's go to Jonathan Lemire for that. Jonathan, what's the latest?
What in the world is
What's
this?
And the Associated Press.
Well, it's breaking news, and we've hired Lemire to investigate people who have dead worms in their brains that ain't part of their brains.
And the New York Times also writes in their assassination of RFK Jr., for decades, Mr. Kennedy suffered from atrial fibrillation, a common heartbeat abnormality that increases the risk of stroke or heart failure. They're trying to disqualify him from running for president of the United States, and MSDNC and Morning Joke are right there with the team.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. experienced memory loss and mental fogginess so severe that people thought he might be sick. He went in for scans. They found a dark spot on the brain, and the belief is, Mr. Kennedy says anyway, that there's a dead parasite in his brain, meaning, I quote from
a
Robert
Democrat
Jr.,
parasite?
The abnormality, quote, was caused by a worm that got into my brain and ate a portion of it and then died.
And then died. There's a dead worm in my brain. It's a worm. I got a worm in my brain. Kennedy claimed to the New York Times that he fully recovered from the memory loss. And campaign spokeswoman Stephanie Spear said the idea that Mr. Kennedy was unfit to be president was a hilarious suggestion given the competition, which is pretty good. Morning Joke.
This happens usually, Willie. This happens with livestock, right? But this is something. Yeah.
I mean,
you know what? There you go. He should have had some of that stuff. That may have helped him, right, Willie?
Was ivermectin?
the ivermectin.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, ivermectin. They're still mocking the legitimate medical treatments. They honestly, the Democrat Party is completely insane. So the Democrat Party's political assassination of RFK Jr. is very much underway. NBC fake news jumping in. RFK Jr.'s new hire, who downplayed January 6th, appears to have been at Capitol during attack, as NBC News today attacking a senior staffer for the campaign. They got pictures of the guy, and they say this is him at January 6th. So RFK Jr.'s new hire, who downplayed January 6th, appears to have been at the Capitol during the attack. How was he at the White House during the June 2020 attack at the White House that torched the Church of the Presidents and forced the evacuation of the first family and the president from the residence? Photos and videos from outside the Capitol on January 6, 2021, uncovered by online sleuths. That's the Democrat Party's opposition research team out to kill RFK Jr.'s efforts at running for president. Amazing stuff. So NBC News is doing their part. The New York Times, NBC News, and MSNBC all going after RFK Jr. today because the Democrat Party is a criminal organization. And this is what they do. Where's Hillary's dossier? Honestly. And I've got more on that. No, honestly, you got the brain worm. He's got the brain worm. He's running for president. What's worse? Kristi Noem shooting the dog, shooting the vicious attack family dog like the Biden family dogs, or RFK Jr. having a brain worm. I got a worm in my brain. Being a mother is, of course, one of the toughest jobs in the world, requiring endless patience, love, and sacrifice. After being the nurturers, the problem solvers, the cheerleaders, the chauffeurs, the superheroes for everyone else, who's going to care for her? Well, now is the time to show mom that she deserves to be pampered with footwear that supports her every move and her every step with G-Defy's innovative technology. To help reduce knee pain, back pain, foot pain, mom can enjoy all-day comfort without compromising her style. Whether she's running errands all day, chasing after little ones, or simply enjoying a leisurely stroll through the beautiful tree-lined neighborhood, G-Defy shoes help provide the perfect blend of support and elegance. This is true. Picking out a pair from my best girl this morning online. That's absolutely true. And I think she decided on a pair. Let mom know every step she takes is appreciated with the gift of G-Defy shoes. And use the code CHRIS for $30 off orders of $130 or more at gdefy.com. That's GDEFY.com. Show mom you care with G-Defy shoes. Yeah, Mother's Day is coming up too, isn't it? Mother's Day, just around the corner. Very crying out loud. Yeah, so Christy Nome shot the family dog. It was a vicious, nasty animal. And now RFK, the Democrats, by any means necessary, they saw he got 12% in the ABC poll, and it's time for the whole team, media, and the rest of the DNC to destroy RFK's candidacy. That's what's happening here. Yeah, so the Democrats are loosing the dogs, and that means NBC News and MSNBC and the New York Times and the rest will gang up now on RFK Jr. and come up with something from a deposition that they paid somebody to unearth and a medical condition or whatever from more than a decade ago. But it is a little bit funny, you know, a brainworm and all that. Let's go to, that's a Twilight Zone episode, isn't it? The earwig or something like that. Let's go to Brian calling from Prince George's County, Maryland. Brian, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hasn't President Biden had 2 brain surgeries?
Do they? Brian, he has had 2 brain surgeries, and neither one of them worked.
Can I say one quick thing about Christy Nome shooting that dog? You know, here in Maryland, what we do when a dog is out of control is we drop them off at the dog pound, and if they can't get rid of them in a week or so, then they gas them.
Yeah, that's a fact.
And we don't have to feel any involvement in that. The dog gets gassed, the problem solved. And then we can still be criticize other people when they take the simple solution.
Well, they take matters into their own hands. You're right, Brian. Yeah, you're right about Joe Biden's 2 brain surgeries, which didn't work because, you know, his brain, she's a broke. That brain of his, she's a no good, that brain. That's a fact. Yeah, that should be the response. And the response is pretty funny from the campaign saying, you know, his brain still works better than Joe Biden's. I mean, look at the competition here. And it's mailbag day. And I said earlier today, because my friend and neighbor Vance said, you know, on Wednesdays when you're doing mailbag, why don't you say what hour you're going to do the mailbag so we know what hour. So I said earlier at the beginning of hour 1 that we would get to the mailbag. In hour 2, we are now, and I said the second half of hour 2, and here we are, a man of my word as always. And it's mailbag day. So let me get to the mailbag from Special K. Special K, a great old friend of mine used to go by Special K. His name was Kent. That was his first name, and that's why he goes by Special K, right? Because you know. And Special K says, "Hi, Chris. I'm very curious about where these MAGA camps in the hills are located that Maxine Waters was talking about on the news. I'd like to join. With 3 exclamation marks from Special K. And for those who don't know what Special K is referring to here, we played the audio yesterday. And Maxine Waters, who's insane, she's been a Democrat member of Congress since the 1920s or something, and they never go away. And she's been brain damaged, I think, from her very early years as a small child. And that's why the Democrats like her. She, California, and she was on with some of her media pals. Who was she on with? Oh, Joyless Reed. Now, Joyless Reed. With her, she wears that Donald Trump wig, that really weird kind of blonde hair Donald Trump toupee that she puts on. It's a little orange. It's kind of strange. But she's on with Joyless Reed and Democrat Congresswoman Maxine Waters, claiming that there are, I guess, bands of merry men up in the hills somewhere, maybe the Alps. The hills are alive with the sound of music, and they're up there plotting to take over cities militarily when the Democrats steal the presidential election in November.
I'm going to ask the Justice Department and I'm going to ask the president to tell us what they're going to do to protect this country against violence if he loses. I want to know about all of those right-wing organizations that he's connected with who are training up in the hills somewhere and targeting, what communities they're going to attack.
They're training up in the hills somewhere and plotting what communities they're going to attack, because the mental illness of Maxine Waters is well known. But here's the disturbing part of this, and there's been a lot of talk about this since she said it, and there are many disturbing elements to this, her lack of brain function being but one of them. She said that she's going to contact the Department of Justice or Joe Biden because she wants investigations to be launched, like in communist countries, like in fascist countries, of imaginary people that allegedly live in the hills and are training and plotting to take over, since they're bands in the hills. What did she call them, right-wingers or something? Just amazing stuff. But perhaps the most noteworthy part is the Justice Department. She's a member of the House of Representatives, and she is calling for the Justice Department to investigate somebody, because in the hills are alive with the sound of right-wing music or something, and they're training, and that's what she's claiming. She's going on television and saying that they're training in the hills, Trump supporters are, and that she wants the Justice Department to be mobilized to investigate attack. It's like worse than Catholic Church, probably. Just completely insane. Maxine Waters claims Trump-connected organizations have training camps up in the hills preparing to attack communities in America if he loses. Well, I guess he better not lose then, huh, Maxine? Now he's got Maxine's vote. That's just amazing stuff. Now, the creepy part of this is that she is a creepy person, but that she's talking about getting the Justice Department involved to investigate her mental illness, her delusion. Just amazing. Man, your Democrat Party, they are very, very unwell. So, but for Special K, I can't tell you where they are. I know you'd like to join. I can't tell you where they are because they don't exist. That's the problem with this claim by Crazy Maxine, because she's insane. But never mind all that. Good to be a Democrat. MSDNC and Joyless Reed sat there nodding. Yes, up in the hills, right. Like Cuba in the 1950s when the communists were plotting to take over Cuba and turn it into a workers' paradise. Amazing stuff. Yep. Now, that's mailbag question number 1 from Special K. Thank you, Special K. Yeah, the Department of Justice will be investigated because she's a member of Congress. She has political power in Washington. And the Democrat Party and the Justice Department, very corrupt, very filthy corrupt. Question from Jose. Next question from Jose. Which one of the 57 states do you think is Obama's favorite? Which of the 57 states do you think is Obama's favorite? And you may recall, if you're a Democrat, you may not, but what Jose is referring to here is Barack Obama. When he was running for president, he said that he was traveling the country and he wanted to get to every state.
I've now been in 57 states. I think one left to go.
50 have now been in 57 states. I think one left to go. So he actually thinks that there are 58 states. And as every child of 6 can tell you, there are 57 Muslim nations around the world, 57 Muslim nations. Well-known fact to every school child in America because we have such an excellent education system and they understand the world we live in so well. Just kidding. That's a little joke. The Democrats have ruined education and gender and everything normal under attack. That's why we have T-shirts and coffee mugs at the Chris Plant store that say, "Remember normal," because it's hanging on by a thread. But which of the 57 states do you think is Obama's favorite? Jose would like to know. And of the 57 or 58, because he still had one more to go to, it's got to be Hawaii. It's got to be Hawaii for him because, that's where he was abandoned by his African alcoholic father and left on the front doorstep of his white, was she from Kansas mother, who was very hip and very, very open-minded. So open-minded her brain fell out, as Jason Miyares might say. And his white mother, who then went off to marry an Indonesian, right, after being dropped like a flaming bag on a front doorstep by the African father of Barack Obama. He was left in Hawaii to be raised by his white grandparents, and mom fled the scene after dad fled the scene. He's got a lot of hang-ups, a lot of issues. He does, a lot of big, big issues. But it's definitely Hawaii. He wishes he had his father went back to Africa where he drank himself to death, and I think he died in a car crash, a drunk driving, a car crash after all kinds of incidents and losing limbs, I think, and being a drunk. And then he became president of the United States, and he's here to destroy the world. Doing a pretty good job. He's the man behind the curtain, behind all of this stuff going on. And Jose, I'd say Hawaii is his favorite state. He went to the Punahou School, his terrible, racist, white grandparents. He accused his grandmother of being a racist, right? He called her racist. And his grandmother, who started out as a secretary at a bank, and because we're a terrible, unfair country, she became a vice president at the bank. And because we're a terrible racist country, he was abandoned on a doorstep by his African father and his crazy white mother. And he became president of the United States. And after going to Columbia University and Harvard Law School and getting a free ride everywhere he went, terrible. He disproves his entire thesis about the United States of America, honestly. And Jose, he bought the beautiful estate, the Italian-style estate from the TV show Magnum P.I. in Hawaii, and then bulldozed it and has built, and the news media has completely hidden this from public view. Years ago now, he tore down that mansion from Magnum P.I., which, when I was a kid, I was like, man, I'd love to have that, and I wouldn't bulldoze it. I'd just live there and be real happy. Robin's Nest, it was called. And Jose, he tore that down in Hawaii and has built a much more fabulous multi-million-dollar oceanfront mansion there, violating state law, building a break wall just for him between himself and the ocean. And that's okay because the left. Yeah, so Jose, definitely Hawaii. He doesn't really like America. And he likes to think Hawaii will break away. So it's like that. All right, now, my next mailbag question. This is great stuff. And this came to us in the U.S. mail, by way of the U.S. mail. This is from Roger. It's Roger Foster from Munford, Tennessee. And it's a great one. Michael actually texted me about this yesterday when he opened the letter. And Roger from Munford, Tennessee says, Chris, I listen to you every weekday morning from Munford, Tennessee, 25 miles north of Memphis. First, my mailbag question is, colon, he's got colon, loves his colon. Are you by any chance related to Raymond Ortega, the New York hotelier who put up the prize money that led to Charles Lindbergh's famous solo flight to Paris? That is the first question from Roger. And Roger, the answer is yes. Now, many of you know that I was born Christopher Orteig, Orteig. It's like Ortega, but with no A on the end, right? Orteig. And I was born Christopher Orteig, and my father was Jules Orteig Jr.
Oh, sir, I beg your pardon. My name's Sutter. What's yours? My name's Jules Orteig, Orteig. What is that, French? Yes, after fashion.
After a fashion. It's Basque. Now, it's from the French side of the Pyrenees, but Basque, ethnically Basque. And yes, my father was Jules Orteig Jr. That means, as you might imagine, his father was Jules Orteig Sr. And Jules Orteig Sr.'s brother was Raymond Orteig. So Raymond Orteig was my father's uncle, and therefore my great-uncle. I did not know Raymond Orteig personally, but Raymond Orteig was a Basque American who became quite successful in the United States of America. He owned 2 hotels in Manhattan, New York City, the Brevoort Hotel and the Lafayette Hotel. They were both big with aviators from World War I, including French aviators. We Americans, we sent a bunch of aviators to fight with the French against the Germans in World War I. And my great-uncle Raymond Orteig was quite a fascinating guy. He owned these hotels, and he put up a prize of $25,000 in 1919 to anyone. It would be awarded to anyone, the Orteig Prize, it was called, and it would be awarded to anyone who would fly either from New York to Paris or from Paris to New York. And it didn't have to be solo. It could be 2 people or 4 people in an airplane. I think 6 people died trying to win the Orteig Prize, crashing into the ocean and so on. And then finally, Charles Lindbergh, in the spirit of St. Louis, won the Orteig Prize when he flew from New York to Paris in 1927. And yes, the Orteig Prize, which is on display at the Air and Space Museum, the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. So yes, Raymond Orteig, my great uncle, family thing. Orteig. I was an Orteig until I was 5 years old. My father died when I was 5 months old. My mother remarried when I was 5 years old, married Bill Plant, and he legally adopted me and my 3 older brothers, and we lost the Orteig name and became Plants, like a potted plant. So yes is the answer to your question. And the X Prize, you may have heard of, is a modern thing, and that's based on the Orteig Prize. Now, Roger has another question for me, and I'll try to get to that as well. But first, when you get sick, where do you go? What do you do? Well, you go to the doctor, of course. Why wouldn't you do the same for your taxes? Go to the doctor? Well, no. But just because the tax deadline is now in our rear view mirror doesn't mean that your tax problems are all over and done with. You've heard the horror stories about the IRS. They never seem to end well. Let me tell you about my friends at Legal Tax Defense. If you have unfiled back taxes, or if you owe the IRS $10,000 or more, then it's time to call the legal experts at Legal Tax Defense. They've got a team of tax attorneys and legal professionals that can help guide you through the complicated tax codes and legal troubles. They are here to help you. They're standing by. With former IRS tax attorneys and expert tax professionals, Legal Tax Defense is here to help resolve your federal and state tax problems. So call them today. Don't procrastinate any further. Call 800-472-0467. Now, for more than 10 years, Legal Tax Defense has helped save taxpayers just like you millions and millions in back taxes owed. So call now to get qualified for your tax relief options. The call is confidential and the call is free. So call them now, 800-472-0467. That's 800-472-0467. Yes, sir. Yes, the Orteg family thing. And, yeah, and I've always been an airplane nut, and I don't think it's related to this necessarily, but and I got to say, my grandfather was quite a fascinating guy, too. He was a race car driver, and he was in the automobile business with Eddie Rickenbacker, the World War I flying ace. They got into a car crash together after drinking all night and racing their cars down Broadway in New York City. Lots of fun family history. Fun mailbag questions, and honestly, the from Roger in Munford, Tennessee, the Orteg prize question, good fun. He also tells about Joe Biden. You know, I always say Joe Biden watches Hazel because he loves Shirley Booth, and Roger points out that Tennessee Williams, the famous American author Tennessee Williams, who had many mental breakdowns and was once institutionalized involuntarily by his brother in a psychiatric hospital, the Barnes Hospital, which is my mother's maiden name, coincidentally. And there, Tennessee Williams used to watch Hazel on television, and he, according to a biography of him, he thought that, quote, Shirley Booth, Hazel, was making veiled innuendos about me. That's at Tennessee Williams in a mental institution. Used to watch episodes of Hazel just like Joe Biden does now. And he used to think that Hazel was talking to him personally. That's pretty funny. I like that. And great mailbag questions today. And Roger, thank you for that. Yeah, good stuff. And yeah, my grandfather, Jules Orteg Jr., he was, among other things, a race car driver and a business associate of Eddie Rickenbacker. And a great story about crashing on Broadway.